Right, so hello everyone, welcome to the first BMAT surgery. So this one will be an introduction to how to prepare for the BMAT. That is the whole idea behind this session. It's essentially tell you how you should best prepare for the BMAT and how you should revise for it. So without further ado, we shall start the session. So if you want to join any of our socials, you can join the BMAT WhatsApp group chat. I'm quite active there, and if you can ask me any questions over there. If you have any questions, you can also email team@sexmed.co.uk. So let's start. So who am I? So some of you might have seen me before. So I ran the BMAT sessions last year, and I also ran a webinar this week with the University of Oxford on the BMAT. So you might have seen me already, either from last year or from the Oxford webinar, because now I am a partner with the University of Oxford. So I make webinars with them on admission tests and other things. I also like badminton. I own the biggest subreddit on the BMAT. It's called @BMAT exam. I also have a YouTube channel if you want to check that out as well. So I did take indeed 7 A levels. I do not recommend it, and they got a 9 in section 2 and a 5A in section 3. And there's what I look like. Much better than the picture from last year. Right. So what will you actually get away with from today's session? And there's a great question. So firstly, we'll be looking at exactly what you'll need, like how you should revise for the BMAT. I will answer your questions as well as we go through. We won't go through any questions walkthrough today because I think it's not very fruitful today. It's not very productive. Right. So what is the BMAT in the first place? So I would say it's one of the most interesting and important tests that we ever take. It's very important. It will affect chances at all stages of your medical applications. Enjoy the journey, not the destination. I always tell my students the following: do not see the BMAT as a hurdle, see it as an opportunity, because you'll see in a second. So, right. So these costs here, they're likely to change because Cambridge Assessments has not released the dates yet. Unfortunately, the dates for the BMATs are still to be decided. But while this is a bit outdated, there is one thing I would like to say. So the dates are usually for 2022. The test date this year has been predicted to be the 2nd of November. The bursaries for the UCAT, for the BMAT, they'll be the same as last year. So it's just 2022. UCAT's deadline, 15th of October, 2022. And you should get your results on the 25th by looking at the patterns from last year, 2022. So university will shortlist you from the 18th of November, 2022 up to March 2023. That is how they should be working this year. The cost itself have not been decided yet because they're still looking into this. But from what I've seen, the August BMAT is not going ahead this year. But that could be subject to change depending on what Cambridge Assessment feels like doing this year. So yeah, the BMAT has 3 sections. Section 1, critical thinking, problem solving. It has 32 questions. So it has 32 questions, 16 of those being problem solving. And 16 of those being critical thinking. Right. Section 2 is more about GCSE exam for all exam boards. You have biology, chemistry, physics, and maths, multiple choice questions. You have 7 of each science and 6 of maths. And finally, for section 3, you have the essay. Either you have a philosophical essay, you can have a scientific essay, or you can have a medical ethics essay as well. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Right. So as I've said, you have 32 questions to do the BMAT in exactly 60 minutes for section 1. You can have 27 questions to be solved in half an hour for section 2, And finally, you have one essay, which is below an A4 page. And you have three question options, and you must only pick one of them from philosophy, science, medical ethics, and you have half an hour. Right. So something to bear in mind is that if you had pretty much unlimited time, everyone here would be able to get the maximum score on their BMATs. That is just something that's just the case, unfortunately. So the BMAT is actually testing your ability and timings. So essentially, how good you are with time management. That is quite a big thing. The BMAT. So you must practice under time conditions. This is very important. So make sure you practice under time conditions. Start preparing as soon as possible, as it takes time to also master the BMAT as well. So some of you might also be doing the UCAT and the BMAT at the same time. So can we all just put that on the chat? So are you all doing the UCAT as well, or just the BMATs? I'm quite curious to see the distribution of scores this year. So one person is doing both, UCAT and BMAT, both. BMAT only, I like it. Both. Most people seem to be doing both. And other exams. What do you mean other exams? So are you talking about the IMATs or like exams? Interesting. Okay. Right. So most of you are doing the BMAT and the UCATs. Can I just ask you why? And I'm going to lead the conversation a bit elsewhere with this. So why is everyone doing the UCATs and the BMATs? I'll give you a point as well. So most schools do not agree with me on this, but the universities appear to agree with me on this. So why are you doing both? Yeah. So that is the most, those are the two most common answers. And so the first option that you should think when taking the UCAT is that you get your results before the UCAT submission. And the second is, some people say that UCAT universities are less competitive. So it's this option in case if you don't do well in the BMATs. Right. So let's think about this for a second, guys. So myth number one, it's a lot safer to apply with your UCAT score because you already know the score. You can apply to university with a cutoff that you meet. Right. Problem number one with this. So, guys. So let's say you apply to university. For example, King's appears to be quite popular. So 1 year King's can have a score of 2,800 for cutoff. The year after that, it can jump to, let's say, 2,870, 2,900. The thing is, if you talk the UCAT, you actually get a false sense of security because you have the score, you meet the cutoff from last year, but the thing is, you do not know what cutoffs will be every single year. So as far as you're concerned, it's as much of a gamble as the BMAT because even if you have unless you have like a 3,000 plus, that is one exception, but that aside, if you have like a normal score, which by definition most people will do, you will simply be gambling. It's in the same way that the BMAT is a gamble because people take the UCAT because they're like, okay, I know my score, I can apply to some universities that I can probably meet I can probably meet the cutoff score for. However, everyone thinks like that. So if the high scoring candidates want to be a bit safer this year by going to the safer UCAT units that will raise the cutoff scores, and you might actually not be meeting the score, even though the years before that that would have been the case. You would have met the minimum cutoff scores. Can you see why I always tell my students, like, it doesn't really matter if you do just the UCATs, the BMATs, or both. And I've talked with universities about this, by the way, like admission students privately. And we've both agreed on this, that it doesn't matter because the risk is relatively similar. Unless, again, it's like if you had the BMAT score of a 9 and you applied to, let's say, Cambridge, you would have been safe. But um, the problem is most people do well on both tests. They don't do really well. And let's think about this, guys. In medical applications, you do not want to do okay-ish in 2 tests. You want to do really well at least in 1 test. If you spread yourself too thin, you can actually put yourself in a position where your BMAT score is not high enough for a BMAT university, and your UCAT score is not enough for a UCAT university. This is definitely a problem that happens quite a lot. So I'm not discouraging anyone from making the UCAT, but do bear this in mind. If your strength is the BMAT, and you're spending so much time on the UCATs, is that really productive? That is just something that I wanted you guys to take away from this session, is that the advice you get given is not always the best advice. And from what I've seen personally, people who only focus on 1 test, that is their strength, they have a much higher success rate than people who do both. That is just how it works, unfortunately. And it makes sense because let's think about this. Let's say we're taking 2 A levels instead of 3. I don't know why you do that, but for argument's sake, you have 2 exams to prepare for instead of 3. Don't you think you'll do better in those 2 exams because you have less things to worry about? You have less revision to do, so you can actually allocate more time towards those subjects and repolish the edges in the subjects that you struggle with. So that is the same exact principle on why I say that the BMAT, taking the BMAT only is not a bad alternative at all, because first thing first, you do not know what the cutoff score should be, and second, you might be spreading yourself too thin. Also, one person said that UCAT universities are less competitive. Yeah. So someone said they are less competitive. Again, this is not true. There are many BMAT universities which are not Oxbridge and the London universities. Again, Leeds, Lancaster, BSMS, Kiels if you're an international students. Again, those universities are nowhere as hard to get into in terms of BMAT scores or competitiveness as Oxbridge. Oxbridge, you might be looking at like high 6s, whereas in BSMS you might be looking at 3s. And I'll be explaining exactly what these numbers mean in a second for those who don't know, so do not worry about this. But so how do we actually revise for the BMAT is what you might be thinking. So this is the most important thing ever. So you must learn the contents, which is available in the Section 2 STEAM Knowledge Guides. Section 2 STEAM Knowledge Guides was a guide made by the BMAT people, like the BMAT working group. So they included the guides on everything that you need to learn on the BMATs. So this is completely free. If you're unsure of something, or even if you're like a strong candidate, you should always read all of this, because it's GCSE. The BMAT is indeed GCSE, but it's not GCSE for EdXL. It's not GCSE for OCR. It's not GCSE for AQA. It's not GCSE for SQA, WJC, CCEA, CIE, whatever example you talk, or even IB for the medium years program, NYP. The BMAT is a GCSE level for all exam boards. So something that you might be covering in your A-level for your exam boards can actually be GCSE for another exam board. So do not underestimate the BMAT just because it's GCSE, because even if it's GCSE, there are things that you haven't learned quite yet. So, for example, I believe it's WJC. So in WJC, you do not cover the blood groups, so A, B, O, whereas in some boards you do. In some boards, you do not cover immunology until the first or second year of A-levels for biology, whereas in WJC, it's covered in GCSE. So there is a lot of variation between exam boards. So be very careful, because even if you know a topic, let's say kidneys, the kidneys that you have been, like what you've been taught at GCSE might not be what they expect from you in the BMATs. It can be a lot more. So do not underestimate the BMATs. Everything they should learn can be found for free on the Section 2 Student Knowledge Guide. Make sure you can apply that knowledge as well, because the BMATs is all about applying knowledge. And finally, exam technique. So skipping is fine. If a question takes too long, then you should move on. It's better to get 3 easy marks than to get 1 hard mark, because every question is worth the exact same. So your goal should be to gain as many marks as possible, not trying to show off to the examiner that you can do the harder questions, because the person who does the easier questions first will actually be prioritized, because they are able to select and prioritize information. And yeah. Okay, so I thought this would show this to you guys. This is what medical applications looks like currently. So in 2016, we had 17,000 applicants, first-time applicants, and 2,000 re-applicants. So we had 20,000 total. In 2017, there was the only time where we saw a dip on those numbers from first-time applicants. Then it rebounds in 2018 to 18,000 and 2,480. In 2019, we had 19,000 and 2,900 re-applicants, bringing the grand total to 22,000. Now we have 20,000 for 2020 and 3,000 re-applicants, bringing that grand number to nearly 24,000. In 2021, however, we had 24,000, a whole 4,000 increase, along with 1,400, nearly 1,400, like an increase of re-applicants. There are 1,000 more re-applicants. There are 1,000 more people who have taken those tests and they know the entire process. So they're a lot more experienced and they don't have exams to worry about. So they can spend much more time to refine their applications. And that brings us to nearly 29,000. This number has not been shown to slow down at all, as far as I'm concerned. It's been quite constant, the trends, and it's only likely to go up as we go through the years. However, the number of medical schools has not changed that much, including places. So the competition ratios is quite literally higher, even though sure there's about 2 to 3 medical schools that have opened, but there are many more applicants that have applied as well. So medicine is now much more competitive than it was in 2016 and 2017, 18, 19, 20, even with 2 new places and expanded places. So admissions tests are the only way for you to literally stand out from the crowds. Because let's say you have 2 applicants. So one of them took the IB, International Baccalaureate. Another one took A-levels for AQA. Another one took A-levels, which were OCR plus EdXL. Let's say the IB person has a 43 to 45 with, I guess, a 7.76 for the high level subjects. A-levels, the person has an A star, A star, A star, and the other person has an A star, A star, A. So everyone here has taken different exams, everyone has different grades, and everyone has different exam boards. So how do universities really compare the students? Because everyone has different exams, so how do we actually compare them? The answer is why admissions were introduced. BMATs as a way to catch you out and weed out applicants. See it as a way to show the examiners and the medical school and the admissions office that you are deserving of a place. You have revised hard for this. You have prepared very hard. The thing is, the admissions test scores also affect, especially the BMATs. For BMAT schools specifically, your BMAT score will play a role in your chances to get an offer. Oh, sorry. I'm not breaking up. Still, just double checking. Yes. So, I would just like to double check. So, am I still breaking up? Can everyone hear? Okay. If there are any problems, please let me know. So, as I was saying, I'm breaking up still. Okay. What I'm going to do is give me 1 second as I am just going to change to a room with a strong connection. Right. So is this all breaking up, guys? Can you hear me a lot better now? I'm just double checking. Try to improve my connection. There we go. Awesome. I always like another room because there was less echo, but you should be hearing some echo now. I do apologize in advance if you can hear some echoes. Okay. So back to the presentation. So can I just double check with everyone? So when did I hear me breaking up so I can just explain something better? Which parts was I breaking up in? Can someone just let me know so I don't miss anything out? Yeah. Okay, so if everyone can just let me know when things were breaking up so I can just clarify a few things, that'd be great. Okay, right, thanks for that. So, as some of you may know, universities that have different exams, they have different scores, they see quite literally everything. So do not see the BMATs or the UCATs as a way to weed out applicants, because that is not the purpose of it. Those admissions tests, they're here to ensure that you are able to stand out from the crowds, because let's say you sat a harder exam than someone that did AQA for that year, or someone that did EdXL. Let's say your exam was a lot harder for your exam boards. That will be affected. That will reflects your grades and possibly boundaries. So everyone says the BMAT because you're all in level playing fields. Everyone is sitting the same tests. Everyone's sitting the exact same difficulty tests with the exact same questions, which is why I don't like the UCATs. I don't think the UCATs standardized at all. There was an element of luck because the questions that you get for the UCATs for yourself aren't necessarily the questions that you get for someone else. So what this means is you can actually get a harder or an easier UCAT, but your score does not reflect that at all. Your score is your score. So someone may have a much easier UCAT than you and get a great score, whereas you get, this is still possible. This actually happened to someone that I know. They got an extremely hard UCAT, which was very unreasonable to solve within the time frame. The questions were a lot longer because they were all picked from a question bank from the computer. So it's all a game of probabilities, if it makes sense, which is why I don't recommend the UCAT. Right. So that is sorted. Make sure that, so to summarize all that, make sure that you see the BMATs as an opportunity. It's not a hurdle, guys. It's not trying to catch you out. It's an opportunity to show medical school that you deserve a place, because your BMATs will also play a role when you are essentially when you are like in the interview stages and even after that. So let's say there are two candidates with the exact same interview score, the one with the higher BMAT is probably going to get that place. So bear this in mind as well. Right. So some free resources, some paid resources, whatever you would like to get. So I have a YouTube channel, and they own the subreddits r-bmat exam. It's like a forum where you can ask questions. I check that every week, give or take. You have the Section 2 knowledge guide, which I've talked about. It's essentially the test, like the test specification. You can get the specification. You can also revise from it. It's completely free. Everyone should be reading that. There's no excuse. You can also be looking at more segment surgeries. I'll be running more of these in September. And you can also join some social media as well. So there's a WhatsApp group, there's a Discord server, main pages, there are many more. If you go on the 6-Med website, you'll find some WhatsApp logos on the top right. I may also try this in the link if I can do that in a second. But yeah, so also you can get some BMAT books. I'm personally not a big fan of them. You can also get BMAT Ninja. It's quite helpful. It's a great platform. You can also get the 6-Med masterclass as well, if that is something that would be of interest. They cover pretty much a lot of strategies which can help you to boost your score. More intensive, you can also go for some BMAT bundles, tuition, and courses. Those are also for those who are a bit more committed to the admission tests. I highly recommend getting some tuition. As a tutor, I'm a private education consultant. I've worked with many people from different schools. I've worked with the universities helping students, and tuition does help, guys. The universities don't like to admit this, but it does help. The schools can jump drastically, so it's worth bearing that in mind. So some reviews from other companies are also available on my subreddits, if you'd like. I would just like to make this clear that I do not work for any company. I am essentially like an independent tutor that essentially I help out different companies and different students and universities and organizations. So it's completely unbiased. My advice has been quite trusted for the past 2 years, so that's something I'm quite proud of. Right, so we have a Q&A now for about 15 minutes. And while that is going, I'll just explain to you guys the BMAT scoring, as I promised I was going to do that. So, BMAT scoring. Section 1, it goes from 1, which is very low, to a 9, which is the highest score possible. This is given to about 1 to 10 people globally. It's for the DBAS candidates. Section 2 is the exact same as section 1. 1 being the lowest, 2 and 9 being the highest. And then section 3, you are marked on both the quality of English, so you get an A to an E, where A is the highest score for English, E is the lowest. And 1 to, I will just, as I put 1, so 5 to 1. Whereas a 5 is the highest possible score. It means that your attitude grade has a very high quality. And the 1, if it's terrible, essentially. The average score is probably about a 2.5A to a 3A. That is usually your average score in the essay. For section 2, it's about a 4 to a 5. And then section 1 is about a 4 to a 5 as well, for the average. It follows a bell curve shape, makes sense. And it's quite skewed to the right as well. So it follows this kind of shape. So a 4 would be around here. A 5 would be around here. A 3 would be around here. So if you're on the A-level candidates, these would be the A grade students. A 4 would be like the A-star students, I would guess. Even then, I think like, not really. I'll say that 5 is more like an A-star candidates. And 4 is like an A 3 is like a B/weak A candidates. This makes a lot more sense. Anything else like a 6, 7, 8, and 9 are basically very gifted students. And for Oxford and Cambridge, Imperial and UCL, you might want to get into this range here, 6 to 9. So 6 to 9 is usually the scores that you want to get for Oxbridge. 7s to 9s if you are an international student. For BSMS, you want to be in this range minimum for Brighton and Sussex. For Leeds and Lancaster, you want to become in the 4 to 6 range. For Leeds, Lancaster is about 4s and 3s as well. So that is all about scoring wise. So I will now be answering some questions as well. So Q&A time. Right. Any questions, guys? Okay, so someone asks, so they're thinking of applying to uni where they only need to get a certain score in the SGT. So that's their main focus. So also they're planning to prioritize the BMATs. Personally, I feel like, as far as I'm aware, there is not a single medical school in the UCAS, unless it has changed. But as far as I'm aware, there's not a single medical school that only looks at the UCAS SGT. That's the only thing. So that is worth bearing in mind. You might actually just be better off focusing on your BMATs only. I only did the BMATs personally in my second year because I took a gap year voluntarily because I didn't like to, well, I didn't really want the whole online learning thing, if it makes sense. So I took a gap year. I took the BMAT and UCAT my first time. I got pretty good scores. I had 6.6 in section 1, 3.5 in section 3. I think it was like a 6 in section 2. Yeah. So, and then in my second year, I only took the BMATs and I had 6.6, 958. So basically, arguably like in the top 10 highest scores globally. Right. So the chat link has been posted on the Zoom chat by someone. Thanks for that. Right. So someone asks for the BMAT, how do you start your revision? So great question. So this is how you should revise BMAT. So I recommend doing like a very old paper, like 2003, so you just get a feel of the exam. Get a rough feel. So you know what it's like roughly. It's very outdated, by the way. Those papers are not reflective of new BMATs. So you might even want to do 2018, 2019 if you are that person. You want to do that as well. Right. Also, then once you're done with doing one paper, you go to the section 2 assume knowledge guides. Those worth bearing in mind. And then once you are 100% confident with this, you start with the BMAT 2019 as your first paper to get a rough feel of how hard the BMAT is currently, because it's a lot harder nowadays than it used to be. Then you do 2003 to 2018 because those are like the harder exams. And finally, you do 2020 and 2021, those papers. So yeah, that is how you should do revise for the BMATs personally. You can also do other papers. So there is a natural sciences tests, which is very helpful for section 2. It's a lot harder, and TSA for section 1 as well. That is also very useful. Right. So if you want to start your revision, section 2 knowledge guide completely free. It's the best way. Right. Okay, so I'm getting some questions on the essays now. Right. So the weighting on the language. So you get so if you answer all three parts of the question, then you get a 3, because the 3 is the minimum that you get if you answer all parts of the question. A 4 is if you do that quite clearly, and a 5 is if you make a very strong argument without weaknesses. A 2 is given when you don't have, since you don't answer all parts of the question, and the 1 is you've probably made something up in section 3. Right, so A, B, C, D, and E are the language scores, and A if you have great spec, basically. So if you have great spelling and grammar, punctuation, the more errors you make, your score will be affected by that, essentially. That is how language is weighted. So you can make an error, like 1 or 2 errors, but I don't recommend this. Ideally, you should not make any errors for such a high-stake test. Also, many students that are applying for medicine, they're quite weak with essays. And they just say, oh, maybe I can just do, section 1, 2, and I'll ace it, and then I won't need section 3. Guys, section 3 everyone thinks like that, unfortunately. So if you do better than everyone in section 3, that is a very easy way to stand up in the crowds and boost your application. Most medical applicants can't write an essay. If you can write an essay, that is going to be a great advantage to you in your application, which is why section 3 is so good. It's a great opportunity. Also, section 2, people say, I will not do physics. Biggest error possible, because there are many easy physics questions. They can actually take quite, well, they don't take that much longer, actually. Some questions can be as simple as F equals ma. So where F is force, newtons, m is the mass, in kilograms, a is the acceleration, in meters per second squared. Well, you might have seen this as this. Right. So someone asks, so what sort of essay topics will be on section 3? So there'll be philosophy. So one question we might get in philosophy would be something very unusual, something just a very obscure quotes. So section 1, like question 1 is always a quote. So there'll be something like, I'm trying to think of something very philosophical. So the meaning of life is to, so the purpose of life is to make humanity better. So what do you know, somebody statements? So there'll be the kind of questions that sound very philosophical, something that you'd see on the Big Bang Theory, if that makes sense. Or on your Saturday Night Live discussions, if you watch that. Anyways, so the question, not sections, it's all section 3. So question 2, section 3. You can have a scientific question. So you can have questions such as, the moral obligation of a scientist is to tell the truth. And then section 3, question 3 would be something like, the skill of the surgeon is equally as important as the technology. What do you think the statement means? Argue the contrary, make a balanced conclusion. As you can see, he has three parts of the question. So explain what you mean, argue for and against, and then a conclusion. That's 3 parts of the question. If you answer all 3, you'll get at least a 3. And most people can actually, if you got a B at GCSE in the English language, you'll probably get a 3A. So it's all it takes, a B in English language, or a 6 for those in England. This would be a B for those in Northern Ireland and Wales. And for the Scottish fives, that would be a B, I believe. Right. Right. So universities, they just look at predicted grades as a tick boxing exercise. So they don't care if you took 10 levels or if you took 3 levels. So they have a requirement on the website. It's usually from A, B to A star, A star, A, only for Cambridge. Everyone else just uses A star, AA maximum. So as long as you meet their grade requirements, which would be your predicted grades, what the university is doing is they're essentially saying, okay, so can this person achieve the grades, the minimum requirements that I need for this course, like in order for them not to struggle with this course? And yeah, that is essentially it. So they look at your predicted grades and they, as a measure to consider whatever you should be getting at least. Like, do you have the academic foundations for this course? That's why predicted grades are used, because we don't have your scores yet. Right. So someone asked how we should structure your section 3 essay. That will be covered in September. There's quite a lot to go through. So someone said that universities have the right to revoke any given spots early on in the course. Not necessarily, unless you fail. Even then, you should be given reseat opportunities. So that's what bear in mind. Okay. So someone said, how do you stand up from the crowd in writing? Because many will be similar. Again, oh yeah, by the way, guys, if you guys really want to know what a good essay looks like, you can also go to the Jesus College, Oxford's YouTube channel. I have made a BMAT webinar. So it's called Ace the BMAT. And it's in Oxford, organized by myself. So it's Martin Pereira, collaborating with Oxford, University of Oxford. So if you want to get a feel of what a solid essay looks like, you can check that out as well. Just for bearing in mind as well. Right. Most effective way to go through and cover everything in specification for section 2. Right. So it's literally just section 2 knowledge guides. What I always tell people is read the whole thing and start doing questions. If you can't do something, then go back and read it again. That is the only way for you to know if you still have gaps in your knowledge, is to read it first, do questions, and repeat the process until you are getting much higher scores. So the number of marks you get correlates with the score every year. So sometimes the boundaries can shift a bit because they're also like in a bell curve, that said. So it's very skewed though, as you can see. It's quite hard to score above or below a 3 or a 5, below a 3 or above a 5. It's quite hard. Bear in mind that most applicants will get a 4, give or take. So yeah, this will be about 12 marks. A 5 would be like, actually, a 4 would be like 12 marks, depending on the section. Section 2 would be like, 12, 14, 10 marks. These are the marks for each of the scores, give or take. They vary each year, but this is a good estimate, I would say. Best resources: section 2 knowledge guides. You can also check out the natural sciences tests, the TSA, the ENGA, the ECHA, the IMATs. These are all papers. These are all papers written by the same people as the BMAT question writers. And honestly, if you're doing questions written by the BMAT question writers, it's still BMAT practice, even though it's not the BMAT tests. So I highly recommend doing these tests, past papers, if you run out of past papers. So this is perfect for section 2. It's a lot harder than section 2. This is perfect for section 2 for maths and physics. This is perfect for section 1, problem solving, section 1, critical thinking. Well, this is it's like the BMATs without an essay. And it's like A-level science. But again, as I've said, some boards overlap with GCSE and A-level, depending on the board. So what is GCSE for my board can be A-level for your board. So I would say it's fine still to do the IMATs if you want. Right. Yeah, practice questions is the best way to revise, but read the section 2 knowledge guides. Yeah, so Harry made a great point. So it's that is a decent essay. I would say that's a 3A essay if you follow that structure, but there's a lot more that goes into a 5A essay if you want to get to the highest bands. Okay. Further maths is not worth it for Cambridge. They do not care. They do not look at it at all. Further maths will probably even disadvantage you because you'll get an A-level offer for further maths, not maths. So I highly discourage everyone taking further maths. It's not the A-level you want to be doing. And that's coming from someone who took further maths and applied to Oxbridge. Not worth it, guys. You'll get a lot more stress in your interviews than you want to get. Trust me. It's not worth it. Right. More questions. Right, so where are we? Right, there is a bias against private school applicants, indeed. There is, yes. Unfortunately, I have been trying to campaign against this because I believe that should be on merits. My job with the university is literally to train people to become because I'm not, okay, guys, my job is not to teach people how to pass exams. I do not teach people how to do well in tests. I teach you on how to improve your skills because your tests will be testing your skills, which are predictors of academic ability and degree success. So while some people will just be teaching how to do BMATs, I'll be doing something else, which is I'll be working on your skills directly, which will indirectly affect your BMAT score. So I'm not sure if you have any gap year applicants here, but if we have, what you might have seen is you do really well in your mocks, and then in your real test, you don't do as well as you thought. That does happen quite a lot. Why is that? You prepared for a test, but that test is assessing your skills. So if your skills are weak, what you've done is you have just prepared for one scenario. You have not prepared for what the test itself is testing. That is the biggest mistake that candidates make. They focus on contents, not just strategies. In order to get the highest scores and to get into the most competitive universities, you need both strategies and contents. Well, if you're getting an A star for the maths, I guess go for it. But at the end of the day, I still think it's not worth it, personally. Right, back to the Q&A. Right, so I got a 6.8 in section 1, a 9 in section 2, and a 5A in section 3. Bear in mind that in my section 1, that was the year where we had cheating, because Cambridge Assessment decided that it would be great to rerun the BMAT 3 times, so the boundaries skyrocketed. I took the first session, but some people had the questions in the second and third sittings. I will hope that they will not be doing it again this year. Hopefully not. But yeah, I got a 6.8, but I've actually tutored someone before, and they got a 9 in section 1. So yeah, the difference between a 6.6 and a 9 is about 4 marks. So it's very small margins that can be determined by, again, luck or attention to detail or something along the lines of, something around those lines. And in my case, it was bad luck because extremely high boundaries from cheating. Unlucky. Right. How much time do you recommend for revision? As much as you can. But time does not always equal quality. Quantity does not always equal quality. So I'll tell you what I recommend to my students personally, and the schools I'm working with. We say 3 to 4 months. That is what we recommend for the BMAT, because that gives you 2 to 3 months to work on content and strategies, and then like a month to do past papers fully. Right. Best resources for answering questions. Again, I have replied that those tests that I've talked about: the natural sciences, the IMAT, the ECA, the TSA, and many more. Right. So when is it too late to start preparing for the BMATs? The day before, or the morning on the test? That's when it's too late to prepare, quite literally. There's so much you can do until the tests. Okay, so good score for Oxford's 4 A levels and 11.9 the GCSE. You want to get 7, not 6. Well, it depends. Are you an international student? If you are an international student, you want to get 7s. If you aren't, you may get low 6s. That should be fine. With low 6s. If you want to get some safety, makes sense, with your application. Obviously, the higher the better, but 6 with those stats is great, personally. And that comes from someone that's working with, I'm partnering with universities on like improving people's scores. So from what I've seen in the past year or so, 6 is usually not guaranteed, but I have quite a lot of high success rates for those GCSEs. Right. Okay, so what's the most efficient way to go through and cover everything in specification for section 2? What I recommend is, what you can do is read topics that you don't know. So essentially, say you've never seen immunology, then you read that and you do past papers. If you can't do a question because you don't know what it is, then go look at the section 2's knowledge guides and try to answer that. So read it and then try to answer it again until you get it. That is the best way. Also, you can discuss it with peers, like in the 6-minute group chats and also in my personal group chat as well. People send questions and we all discuss them, which actually happened literally just yesterday. Right. So that is sorted. So is further maths worth it when Cambridge? Well, applying Cambridge, 3 levels is sufficient at Cambridge. A fourth A level does help, but further maths is not that 4th A level that you want to have. Most candidates, they will have at least 2 sciences and maths. Some people even take 3 sciences and maths. That is what I'd say is the not the average, because that is definitely not an average. That is like the most talented applicants. But if there's something such as an average or the most common combination, yeah. So the model, if that's even applicable here, would be 3 sciences and maths for the most common combination at Cambridge. Further maths is very useless because they don't look at it separately. Like, instead of giving you an offer for maths, they'll give you an offer for further maths. So I think you're just giving too much stress for no reason at all. Okay. So, okay, best resources for questions that we've answered. Okay, so so the number of marks you get correlates to the scores every year. Yes, so it correlates. Number of marks correlates to a score. So if you were to get 6, it's about 16 to 17 marks in section 2, and about 24, 25, 26, sometimes even 27 for section 1. 26, 27 sounds about right for section 1. Is VR, so verbal reasoning, in the UCAT revision similar to section 1? Not at all. Completely different, unfortunately. They're all different in that regard. So what are the best ways to revise? Is it practice questions or is there another methods? Practice questions, discuss them with friends, do questions which are much harder than the actual BMATs, because if you can do the harder multiple choice questions, then the easier BMAT ones will be a lot easier, and you'll do a lot better in your tests. It makes sense. Like if you could do harder questions, the easy questions should be quite attainable. Okay, that has been answered. So what does it say about a university? So what entrance exam they want you to take other than the competitiveness? Well, I don't quite get the question, but I assume that you're talking about, so what does it mean? So is a university more competitive because these the UCATs or the BMATs? The answer is no. There are some not competitive or not as competitive. They're still competitive, don't get me wrong, but not as oversubscribed as, let's say, Oxbridge for the BMATs. But there are also some heavily oversubscribed UCAT schools such as King's and Edinburgh. So it's worth bearing that in mind as well. So is there a bias against private school students for state school students? Yes, there is. So do state school students need a lower score than the private school students? No. Essentially, if two students, one for a private school and that has an average, which is much higher than the state school students, the state school student will get the offer. So let's say you go to a private school and that school has a 9.9s average. I don't know what kind of school that would be, but for argument's sake, they have the average is 9 GCSEs at grade 9. So for those grades, and let's say you have a state school student who has 9 same grades, and he went to a school that had an average of 8 GCSEs at grades 7 or 6. The state school students will look better within the context, so therefore he'll get the offer. However, that's not always the case. The BMAT does actually play a big role in this. So if you are a private school student with, let's say, a 7 or 8 or a 9, it doesn't matter what kind of state school student they have. Your score is still fantastic. So the universities will definitely be keen on having you on board. So essentially, you just need a slightly higher BMAT score if you are a private school student. That is all that I have to say. You have a bit more pressure on yourself because of the contextual, because widening access to medicine. So essentially, you will need to do some extra work. Okay, so do we have any more questions, guys? Right. Any more questions, everyone? No, not necessarily. So state school students do not need a lower score. They'll need the average score. So they'll still need to be quite competitive. They'll still need to get the average scores. So, for example, if you're playing for Oxbridge, you won't get an offer with 4s just because you go to a state school. You still need 6s. But someone from a private school that does extremely well, they might need to get slightly higher than you. That is the whole point behind this. But bear in mind that there are also some very good state schools. So there'll be Hills Roads and many other schools. Well, I can't answer that question, unfortunately. Okay, so yeah, I'm not allowed. Anyways, so with that in mind, I think that we've answered all questions so far, guys. So I believe that I'll call it today if we don't have any more questions. No worries. So if you have any questions, I will be on the 6med group chats as well, and I also have my own group chat. So if you go to r-bmat exam there is a group chat on WhatsApp. That is my own group chat. You can also get the 6-minute one, which is on WhatsApp as well, if you would like as well. I'm admin in both groups, and I own this group chats. I'm an admin in this one. So if you want to talk to me, feel free to go there. I reply quite a lot. I'm quite active in both chats, especially in this one. So yeah, if you have any more questions, please also email team@sixmed.co.uk. So team@sixmed.co.uk if you have any more questions, or if you have any inquiries that are related to the SIGMED services. So I hope everyone has a great day, and that is all for today. So goodbye, guys.